Welcome to Restoring Education in America with Priscilla Rahn. She's a master educator and author, leading the conversation to restore the American mind through wisdom, virtue, and truth.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Restoring Education in America. I'm your host, Priscilla Rahn, and I'm so excited that you've decided to join the conversation today. But I want you to keep in mind that we are opening a new private classical school this fall called Excalibur Classical Academy. Our mission and vision is restoring America's heritage by developing servant leaders who are keepers and defenders of the principles of freedom, for which our founding fathers pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. So if you are looking for a school for your kindergartner through third grader, please go to our website, excaliburclassicalacademy.org. We are offering a liberal arts education. So we'll be doing phonics, grammar, Latin, history, science, music every day, art every day, physical education every day, and of course, lots of free playtime and lots of fun. So please check us out. But the one thing I also want to share with you that's really exciting is that all of our inaugural families will receive 100% scholarships this fall. So you want to take advantage of this because there's only one inaugural year and you want to be a part of something really fantastic. But talking about fantastic things that are happening in education, I am really excited to bring my next guest to the stage who has a lot of experience in education. And we're just going to have a wonderful conversation. I am bringing him to the stage right now. Welcome, Dr. Donyall Dickey. How are you?
I'm well, Priscilla. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you and your audience today.
Well, I am so excited to have a conversation with you. And you came across my social media a couple times, and I was just sucked into the content that you had. And I was like, who is this man? I need to have a conversation with him. But before we get into that, I'm going to share a little bit of your bio with our listeners.
Okay.
So Dr. Dickey is a nationally recognized authority on curriculum, instruction, organizational development, and school leadership. Dr. Dickey holds degrees from the University of Texas at Austin, Loyola University, and George Washington University, where he earned his doctorate in educational leadership and policy. Following a decade of successful campus-based leadership, he advanced to serve as assistant superintendent and chief academic officer in one of the nation's largest school districts. He later held the roles of chief schools officer and chief academic officer in a major southeastern district. As founder and CEO of Education Epiphany, Dr. Dickey leads a national consulting team that partners with urban, suburban, and rural school systems in more than 40 states.
Yes.
Wow. And I got a little bit of your time, and so I'm super honored. So just for my viewers, the video that I saw of you, you were talking about literacy. Mm-hmm. And you were just breaking it down in this way that was like really, really clear. I don't know if you know which video I'm talking about.
Well, I know it's from my podcast, The Epiphany Exchange. Yes. And yes. And I was talking about, I think, a concept, like a literacy concept that we know gets assessed. And I was with my co-host, I was trying to unpack the standard in a way that creates like teacher clarity, but also builds an access bridge for kids.
So when you were in education, what drew you into that space in your early years, and what subject did you teach?
Okay, so I knew I wanted to be a superintendent when I was just like a little kid, because my mentor in college, when I was away from home, was like a state level academic administrator for the State Department of Education for Texas. And so as a little person, I knew that I wanted to like follow in his footsteps. So like whatever he did, because I admired him so much, I wanted to do that without really understanding what it took to get there. And so when initially I taught third grade in the housing projects of Baltimore City as a 22-year-old. And when I got there, my third graders, 8-year-olds, they were reading like pre-K kids because they've been underserved for so many consecutive years. They looked like they couldn't, but they were actually they had capacity. But they tested like they couldn't. And then after having taught third grade for a couple of years, I taught British literature for high school seniors and SAT prep and Algebra 1 at the Mayor's Academy for many years in Baltimore.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of people don't know the journey. It's quite a journey to go from the classroom into district level, high level executive position.
Yeah.
And then, now you're a founder of your own organization.
Yes.
So you've been at nearly every level of public education. What do you believe is the single most, the biggest barrier to restoring excellence in American education today?
Oh Lord, that's a heavy question, Priscilla. I'll try to do my best with it. But I believe that content knowledge is the currency of school improvement. It's the currency of student achievement. And unfortunately, I see folks who are teaching content who would benefit from sort of going back to school a little bit on the content that they're teaching. So if I'm going to teach kids how to, I don't know, analyze U.S. seminal documents of historical and literary significance with a focus on themes, purposes, and rhetorical features, I have to know what that is first. Right? So that I don't pick up, now I'm going to involve administrators, so that I don't pick up the district provided curriculum and not be scrutinous of it. Because if children are being judged against the standard, then the curriculum has to support the planning and the delivery of instruction consistent with it. And so if an individual teacher is struggling with content knowledge and they're being given a teacher resource that doesn't help them to plan consistent with that standard, then the children are the beneficiaries of those discrepancies.
That's a really great point that I'm seeing, because for 2.5 years, I was a full-time teacher evaluator, but then I was also an administrator, and now I've been mentoring,
Yes.
as a senior, what they call master teacher,
Yes.
other educators. And so, yes, having that strong content knowledge as a base is critical, because
Yeah.
you can't deliver the content of the we're talking in a way where we understand. So there's a lot that's already assumed and understood. I think for people who might not be a classroom teacher or an educator, may have a bit of a difficult time understanding why this is such an important thing, because you've got the content knowledge, the classroom knowledge, and then you've got the culture piece and the classroom management piece and the parent piece. But as you say, it's critical that our educators start with a strong base of content knowledge.
Yeah. And look, I was a principal in Baltimore City at a time when I felt like everything around me was chaotic, right? So I walked into a principalship, I may have been 28, 29 years old, and everything around me felt like I was in the center of a hurricane, like a cultural hurricane. Like, I had kids who were 16 years old in 8th grade, right? I had kids who were truant. I had kids who were transient. But we were able to demonstrate the most significant gains in Baltimore in just 1 year because teachers allowed me to address their content knowledge. They allowed me to build their content knowledge so that they had expertise in what they were teaching so they can transfer that knowledge to kids. And then I would say, even while all those interesting things were happening around me, we also dealt with pedagogy. So my answer to your question is there are several keys to student achievement, school improvement, content knowledge being one of them, but then pedagogy being another one. Because I can know the content really well as an educator, but my pedagogy impacts my ability to get it to children, right? And to build an access bridge to rigorous grade level developmentally appropriate thinking.
Yeah, that is critical. And so now that I'm transitioning out of public education for 3 decades and I'm going into private education, I'm really having to detox a little bit from how I have been trained to think about what an education looks like. And it's quite freeing, actually. And to your point, one of those, and this is a little bit controversial for people who are in the public education space, and this is not to take away anything from public education, but a teacher has to come with a degree, and they have to pass a test, and they have to show that they are a licensed teacher, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Right. But in a private school, I can prioritize content knowledge. So if I want someone who's an expert in science or math,
Yes.
I can hire an engineer, and then I can teach you that pedagogy part. I can teach you the
Oh,
classroom education
absolutely.
part. But I found this from one of my mentors who's been in the classical education space, and he's done it the other way, right? Where, what can you teach? Can you teach? Can you teach? But they don't have strong content knowledge. And then
Yeah.
he started hiring content experts
That's right.
and then taught them how to teach. And
That's
so
right.
to your point, I mean, I think it's just an interesting conversation for those of us in the education space. How do we fix it?
Well, I would tell you, Priscilla, and a lot of folks don't know this because, I've been blessed and fortunate to be elevated to the status of like expert, but I started my teaching career uncertificated. I was not a traditionally trained educator, but I knew content. And then I became certificated as I was a teacher and a school administrator.
Yeah. And I've in my side conversations, because now I'm about to retire. By the
Yeah.
time this airs, I might already have been retired. But,
Okay.
and so I feel like when we talk about the systems, like, we still have the achievement gap, we still have the economic gap, right? After all of the 1960s new policies. And I keep asking this question. I ask it in my book. Why do we still have this education gap? Why can't we figure it out? Every kid now has access to
Ooh,
a free public education.
ooh, yes,
Come on,
ma'am. I'm
unpack
getting
it, Dr.
excited. I'm
Dickey,
getting excited.
unpack it.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. So I just wrote a book called The Universal Language of Literacy, and it's available on our website, educationalepiphany.com. Okay. Sorry for the plug.
Oh,
All
no,
right.
go ahead and plug
I
it.
can do Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. We have spent billions of dollars. We have invested billions of dollars in public education, and 75% of the nation's children have yet to reach reading proficiency, and math is somewhere close to that. The more minority, the higher that number, and the more grappling with a disability, the higher that number. In fact, in the US, 95% of children grappling with a disability have yet to reach reading proficiency, but they've been in school for 13 years, some of them. All right. And so what's the issue? It's calibration. Okay. So back in the day, Priscilla, you know this as a retiree, which I cannot believe you're close to retirement. Okay. We were told if we can only align curriculum with instruction and assessment, then things would get better academically. That is true. But I don't think we ever unpacked what is curriculum, what is instruction, what is assessment. So here's what I've been doing for the past 20 some odd years, redefining that if only we could. So instead of calling it aligning curriculum with instruction and assessment, which is like, I've reframed it as aligning knowledge, the things we know about what we know will be assessed. And I don't mean teach to the test. I mean, what is central idea? It's the most dominant, unifying thought in a portion of a text or a text in its entirety. That is what central idea is. So everyone who's teaching central idea and everyone who's evaluating teachers who are teaching central idea and everyone who's purchasing materials to teach central idea, right? And handing it down to teachers and having them use it with fidelity. I can't stand that word, okay? They have to understand what central idea is. So we align the knowledge that we have about the concepts that we know will be assessed with the language we use to facilitate, plan, and facilitate and assess instruction consistent with that knowledge. And then the tools we need in our toolkit to help children get from A to B to Z without instruction being characterized by learned helplessness. So it's too fuzzy to say align curriculum, instruction, and assessment, but it's more clear to say, what do we know? What does everyone on the instructional bench know? What does everyone in the instructional ecosystem know about what we know will be assessed? What is the language we use to get that to children so that central idea is not 10 different things? Because central idea enters the standards in most states in this country in 6th grade. But if I give 1,000 teachers a post-it note and say, define central idea, I'm going to get 1,000 different answers. And children are beneficiaries of those discrepancies. It's carbon monoxide instructionally. Because children are not incapable, they're confused. And then if we give teachers the right tools to teach in perfect alignment with the knowledge and the language, then voila, school improvement.
So why can't, okay, so here's the problem, right? Okay. So from state to state, it's everybody gets to do whatever they want to do.
Okay, fine.
Right?
Fine.
We don't have, okay, I've gotten to this place after going around the universe. I don't think that the federal government has a role
Mhm.
the way I was taught that the federal government has a role in educating.
Okay.
I personally believe parents are the first educators of their children.
Mhm.
Policies closest and that are local, right, are
Yeah.
best for communities because it meets the needs of communities. So local school boards and parents,
Yes.
state school boards do it better. But we're tied obviously to the funding, right? This federal funding. That's why for me personally, I won't put you on the spot unless you want to talk about it.
Put me on the spot.
Okay. I'm not bothered by the reduction or elimination of the federal Department
Mhm.
of Education. I'm not bothered by that. I'm like, bring that money back to the states and let us locally spend that money and meet the needs of our kids because, spending $80 billion a year for
Mhm.
DC buildings and people who don't know our kids doesn't necessarily we can see it hasn't helped us, and we can see in the history of our nation how a federal Department of Education really is more political than it is actually helping address. Now, not to say that we didn't need Brown versus Board, like it's not to say that we didn't need to address some of the inequities in education, but to your point, what is it that we want children to know, and
Okay.
how do we know they're
Okay.
gonna get there?
Ooh,
And
ooh, ooh! I have an answer for you,
come on,
Priscilla.
come on, come on, let's go,
All right.
Dr.
Okay.
Dickey,
All
unpack
right.
it.
Okay. So look, I'm happy you mentioned like legislation that attempted to rectify disparities. Like people are afraid to say that there are disparities that exist in this nation, but there are. In every segment of of this society we live in which we live, excuse me, there are discrepancies and disparities. But I will tell you, it is not zip code or poverty that are the greatest determinants of student achievement, because underperformance has never been about zip code. It's always been about, and it's been hidden, but I brought it to the surface for many years. It's not about poverty. It's not about the zip code. It's about the quality of the instruction inside of the zip code. And there are children who I have met who live in Wisconsin where they are majority Caucasian, and they are being underserved not because they're poor, and they're being taught by people who look just like them. They're not being underserved because they're poor. They're being underserved because the quality of their instruction is not what it should be. And I've been places where the children are majority minority, and they're not being underserved because they're poor. I mean, that is a factor, right? That children who live in impoverished communities are more likely to have, a schooling experience that's not fully worthy of consumption. But they're being underserved because of the quality of the instruction. They just happen to be poor. They just happen to be minority.
Hmm.
Right? And so I don't care where you live, children have to add fractions. But there are people that I meet across this country, adults, and I ask them, what is a fraction? And they misdefine it.
Hmm.
What?
So
So,
you're getting back to what you started at the beginning, which is
yeah,
content knowledge and that ability
pedagogy.
to the pedagogy,
Hmm.
and then we're at the mercy of who the instructional leader is. If they can support, I call principals instructional leaders because I think that's
Hmm.
what they should be.
Sure.
A
Thank you for that.
principal is like, it's kind of like, what are your
Mm,
duties, right?
yeah,
But an
yeah,
instructional leader is
yeah,
deeper.
yeah,
For me, it has more meaning,
yeah,
um, and a more accountability on how you mentor and grow your staff
yeah.
into being that teacher that you're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, I wrote about it in one of my other books called The Integrated Approach to Student Achievement, the fourth edition, also available on our website. I write about that a principal is supposed to be an organizational asset, not an organizational liability, not a placeholder,
Hmm.
right?
Well, okay, so let's talk about it. Oh my goodness, I feel like I can just talk to you for hours. Let's talk about curriculum and instruction.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm ready. I'm
So
ready.
you are an authority on curriculum and instruction. So you kind of talked a little bit about it, like what schools are getting wrong. Um, and so talk a little bit more about what you think schools are getting wrong right now when it comes to what and how we teach students.
Okay. So let me go by content area if you don't mind. And if you want to interrupt me, take me a different direction, I'm fine with that. So let me start with ELA, English Language Arts. Some folks are getting this right. But if you look at our data, some folks are getting it wrong as well. So I'm not being critical of the folks who are getting it wrong as much as I want to put up a mirror in front of them and their instruction and their instructional leadership. So ELA instruction is supposed to give kids balanced exposure to both informational and literary text. So when kids are learning how to summarize, they should summarize informational text and literary text, not to pass the test, because if children have access to the experience, you don't have to worry about the test. The test will take care of itself, right? So we have too many kids calling informational text stories, and the adults are allowing them to, because how you approach a story is not how you approach an informational text as a reader. Mm-hmm. Too many children in the U.S. don't read on grade level. So then, what do we do about kids who are sitting in the 7th and the 8th grade? Do we just keep passing them on, or do we, do something about it? So the things that a child needs who has difficulty reading in 7th grade is the same things they needed when they were in the 2nd grade. And if we don't give it to them, they'll never have it. And so I have this formula that I help schools to integrate into their service to kids in the ELA and math and science and social studies. And it is decoding plus creating meaning is reading. So decoding is I just see letters on the page and I know what sounds to make. And there are children under our care, particularly those for whom no one will come, who see letters on the page and they don't know what sounds to make. So they don't read on grade level. And you can pray, but I do believe in God. Jesus Christ is the center of my life. He is the savior of the universe, right? But if children do not know how to see letters on the page and know what sounds to make, they won't read on grade level. And there are folks who allow kids to read things, quote, air quotes, in class, when they could say to kids, here's a highlighter. Do you see any words you don't know how to say? Let me show you how to say them. And then we will read the paragraph to determine its main idea. But people are saying, I don't have time for that. I have to hurry up and finish the curriculum. Well, we're finishing the curriculum now. And what status are we in? What have we gained?
Yeah, no, 100%. And so I've seen this shift, even though my content is music. Yes. I've seen this with my colleagues where it used to be, I was taught using phonics, but we've gotten away from that. I can't speak for every state. I can only speak for where I've been, gotten away from that. And kids can't, when I have students read texts, they are mispronouncing words and not understanding how to put sounds together. And that is a critical thing. And you're 100% right. How do you understand? Well, I keep hearing races for people who don't know, RACES, it's an acronym. And they can't even do that. They can't even pull out the most important evidence from a text.
But how can you if you're grappling with the most foundational skill, which is I see letters and I know what sounds to make. And the other half of reading is that kids need to create meaning at the same rate that they decode or pronounce, which means that they might see the word egregious on paper and they know how to say egregious, they decoded it. But then the other half of reading is knowing that E in egregious means out, and GREG in egregious means group, and OUS in egregious means fully. So they understand that egregious means fully outside of the group. So they pronounced it and decoded it, but they also created meaning at the same rate. That's reading.
So you just did a perfect commercial for my classical academy where we are doing everything with the Socratic method, and we're going to read, discuss, think, and write, and rinse and repeat. Read, discuss, think, and write. And I used to do that. I remember reading books like Charlotte's Web, like the classics, and having to understand the story and the meaning and the characters and the lessons behind that, and developing character, and like Pinocchio and some of these stories these books that we all know about, and maybe in our generation we actually read. But I have students who've never read any of these classic books and don't really understand how to apply a Socratic method, which I think is one of the most impactful ways of approaching literature once you can read. But they can do that in kindergarten too.
Of course they can. Look, the prerequisite of being able to think on grade level is not reading on grade level. You can think on grade level even if you can't read on grade level yet. Okay, so to fully answer your question about what's missing, I'll just finish ELA, and maybe we'll talk again about the other content areas. And that is, okay, balance of information and literary text, Kids need to be able to decode and create meaning. Kids should be able to cite textual evidence. But there are two, because I'm going to your comment about the classics. Children should be reading classical text, traditional text, and mythological text on the literary side, plus informational text. But my point here is that too many children across content areas are not required to cite textual evidence to support their response to a given question. And I know 3-year-olds that can do it. So what about a 13-year-old? So I was reading this book with a group of kids. I showed them the title page. I showed them the cover, the title page, and the back of the book. And then we started reading this book with no words in it, Priscilla. And so it's just about telling stories, right? Repeat, like telling stories over and over again and use your imagination to tell the stories. So on page 2 of this book, there was a kid named Billy. This is from my classroom library collection for grades pre-K to 2. And we were reading this book, and I showed the kids page 2, and Billy and his mom and his dad were having breakfast, and we got all the way to page 6, and Billy was receiving a balloon from a girl at the park after school after his mom picked him up. So I said to these 3-year-olds who've only been alive for 36 months, who is this girl giving Billy the balloon on page 6? And they all said, Billy's sister. You know, they speak in unison when they're 3. And so, but one kid said, no, it's not. And he flipped back to page 2, and he said, Billy's sister's wearing a yellow shirt. That girl giving Billy the balloon, she's wearing pink. So what did that kid do? He cited textual evidence. He went to the page and used it to prove his point. He can't even tie his own shoes yet. He doesn't even know his mom's real name yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is to your point, and I love how you're breaking down words, and there's power in that, because understanding words and the foundation of our words, which is why we're teaching Latin and we're incorporating that even in kindergarten. It's it's not like sit down and it's our Latin lesson. It's we're incorporating it and embedding it in the teaching of words, so that children, to your point, understand the roots. So I get to use big words like, man, you are so cranial. and people understand what I'm saying. Right. You're using your head. You're really a thinker, aren't you?
That's right.
But it's really fun to be able to discuss in that type of ecosystem. I love talking with other educators on deep levels like this, because it starts to invigorate me. And so when you're looking at what some non-negotiables are, what are 2 to 3 non-negotiables that must be in place for schools to see real academic improvement?
Solid professional learning. Multi-tiered solid professional learning, where the most senior person and the most junior person participate equally and fully, so that the left hand does not undo the work of the right hand. So a professional development plan that is multi-tiered and long-term, because you cannot do everything first. So some things have to happen in year 1, some in year 2, some in year 3, because people feel like school improvement, too many people feel like school improvement is happening to them rather than through them. Okay. So then secondly, in addition to solid professional development, I would say coaching and feedback. But the coaches and the folks who are providing the feedback, they need to know what they're talking about, Priscilla.
Oh, you're preaching now. I have stories.
Right. Yes.
I have stories. And that cognitive coaching, I like cognitive coaching, and really trying to draw out and have the teacher articulate and walk them through speaking about their thinking.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. But I mean, the first time someone's engaged in a cognitive thinking coaching conversation, and they're forced to think about what they did and why they did it, it's really, it's an art. But I agree with what you're saying. And for me, this is my last year, and my coach does not have as much time in education as I do. I don't know if it was intimidating to them, but I'm coaching them to coach me. I'm like, okay, listen, you have something that you can give me feedback on. Don't worry. I am here to hear what you saw, what you think I could do differently, what's in your toolbox that I don't have in my toolbox.
Yeah.
In order to grow.
And the time is gone when someone can say, well, I don't know your content, but I just know good instruction. Instructional leaders should never say that, because it does not inspire confidence in the people who are being observed by you. Right?
Okay, so I've been guilty of saying that because so I've been guilty of saying that
Yeah.
because people will say, oh, well, your degree is in music. So
Mhm.
what can you teach me about, literacy? So I've said
You
that.
should
So
learn it.
what do you recommend that I say? Or just don't say it at all?
No, I wouldn't say it at all. And I would say, and I'm going to add the third thing for you. I would say, learn it. Because as a former, when I was an assistant principal, I was 20 something. My principal said to me, and I thought this lady was mean. I thought she was like Beelzebub reincarnated, but she was actually trying to teach me to be an instructional leader as an AP. She said, your office is for before school and after school, but during the school day, I expect you to be in classrooms to give teacher support and give kids support and find out what both kids and children need from us as an administrative team. And in the process, I learned ELA, I learned math, I learned social studies, I learned science, I learned special ed. So this day, you can't detect when I'm presenting which content area I taught unless I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can talk to you about ecosystems, and I can talk to you about Gestalt, the theory of aesthetic beauty. I can talk to you about metamorphosis. I can talk to you about how a character's motivations advance the plot. So if we're going to give folks feedback on content as school administrators, we've got to learn the content.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
That I agree with you 100%. Like, take the time to go to the standards because everyone has access to it, and
correct.
read the standard, and then come back and have a conversation with me because you're right. I just agree with everything that you've said today.
Please disagree. Okay, so solid professional development,
Uh-huh.
coaching and feedback, and then I would say time to plan.
Okay.
Okay, now because I can't give folks more time, but I see people, Priscilla, wasting time.
Yes. Dr. Dickey, there are teachers who can't even explain what's the difference between a lesson plan and a unit plan. Like,
Yeah.
what is a unit?
Mm-hmm.
And so even I don't want to pick on our university education preparation programs, but there's just so much to learn, and you're not going to learn it all in college. It is a lifelong pursuit to
Mm-hmm.
become a master teacher. And I was always taught a master teacher is not a perfect teacher. A master teacher is a reflective teacher. And if you're constantly growing, and I can see you are a lover of learning,
Yes, ma'am.
and you are modeling that,
Yes, ma'am.
that is the sign of a great servant leader and someone who is going to change the world, Dr. Dickey.
Priscilla, you're too kind. And I'll dovetail on what you said by saying this. I cannot call myself a teacher if I don't allow myself to be taught.
100%, that humility piece.
Yeah.
Dr. Dickey,
Yes, ma'am.
where can people find you? Give us your website and the names of your books and where they can buy your books.
Absolutely. So our website is educationalepiphany.com, EPIPHANY. And there you'll find information about who we are, what we do, our impact, our instructional resources, professional development, keynotes, demonstration lessons, you name it. You can find me on LinkedIn at Donyall Dickey, EDD. You can find me on Facebook at the same. And you can find us on Spotify, the Epiphany Exchange podcast on Spotify. You can find it on iTunes, and you can also find it on YouTube. And I've written several professional books and hordes of resources and instructional materials, including I'm the lead author of Scholastic's reading program, K-6. So I've written most recently The Universal Language of Literacy, Humanizing Education, published by Marzano, The Integrated Approach to Student Achievement, published by Educational Epiphany, and Curricula Chaos, Mitigating Curricula Chaos, by Educational Epiphany. And so any of those resources will help aspiring leaders and sitting leaders to sharpen their toolkit.
Well, Dr. Dickey, I could just talk to you for hours, but I'm going to land our plane right now because I know you're very busy, and I'm going to tease you a little bit. Yeah, because you're a hook 'em horns.
Yes.
UT. I went to TCU.
Oh, crazy.
So I'm not going to hold that against you because you
Please don't.
gave me a really nice interview.
Yes.
But thank you so much for your time today. And to my listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. Catch me next time. And remember, educating the mind without the heart is no education. So seek wisdom, cultivate virtue, and speak truth.
Thanks for tuning in to Restoring Education in America with Priscilla Rahn. Visit PriscillaRahn.com to connect or learn how you can sponsor future episodes to keep this message of faith, freedom, and education on the air.